Welcome to Uncaged, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Martin Stenzig. Hey, Martin, how are you?
Good. How are you, Ben? And thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show, Martin. Martin, I'm excited to learn more about how you're working and all the stuff that you're working on at Rizing. Martin is the CTO at Rizing. Rizing's objective is to enable every business that uses SAP solutions to achieve a truly intelligent enterprise. And we'll talk about all of the things that Martin's working on to make that happen. I mean, he drives the technology that oversees their three divisions to develop and maintain that technology strategy and to push Rizing forward. Lots to discuss there. But before we get there, Martin, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Yeah, as you said, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Rizing. At Rizing, we're helping companies run their organizations better by implementing SAP's application portfolio. So in that, we consider ourselves a boutique provider as we have world-class experience in three areas. The first one is all around human capital management. So we put the people at center of the universe for that. The second covers what we call enterprise asset management. Now, enterprise asset management is sometimes mistaken by financial assets and your stock portfolio. Here, we're talking about power poles, oil refineries, power generation stations, railroad tracks. That's sort of what the assets we're talking about. And lastly, the third one is a more vertical focus on fashion and retail. So before I became the CTO at Rizing, I ran the North American operations for our enterprise asset management line of business. I've been with the company for 15 years, and we grew it really from a handful of people back in 1999, actually 2006, to about $220 million of revenue last year. So it's an amazing feat that I think we have delivered in 16 years, and it's exciting to be part of that team. On a personal note, as you might be able to tell, I grew up in Germany, emigrated to the US about 20 plus years ago. And these days, I call the Pacific Northwest home, where I reside with my wonderful kids, a wife, obviously, and a dog.
Well, Martin, it's an amazing story. And certainly I can see this one being one where you and the team have grown dramatically over the last 15 years. Now, in your role as CTO, tell me how you are able to work with all the divisions and stay one step ahead of all of them in terms of the technology that every one of them needs.
It is a daily struggle, especially with all the technologies that sort of hit us in the market for the past, especially in the last 5 years. So you're doing the best you can, but you really just touch the surface. In my role at Rizing, I'm trying to focus on the things that are tangential to SAP or could touch SAP. So I'm proud to say that I'm working with a small, powerful team that works on a variety of topics, ranging all the way from general cloud topics via augmented reality to things that are very unique, like machine learning models that work to detect objects in a point cloud. So those are the new things where we have LiDAR information that we're processing in order to detect objects like power poles in a scan that we're doing with our own car. So those are the things where where we are doing stuff that the Teslas of this world are doing. And I always tell my team, listen, we don't have the necessity to do these recognitions in milliseconds in order to save lives. For us, it's more the accuracy and that we can actually process that. But those are all the technologies that we're touching these days. Even though we're an SAP company, with lots of technologies that are driving real business value in lots of our customers. So that's what excites me on a day-by-day basis to go to work and to work with my powerful team in order to drive that forward.
That's amazing. I mean, let's tweeze through that a little bit. I mean, you talked about augmented reality, talked about machine learning a bit. I mean, there is so much noise in all of these areas. What is the real story, and what is of value, Martin, when you think of things like augmented reality, and how can you help us kind of get to assess these things a bit more effectively?
Yeah, for us is really augmented reality, virtual reality. They've gotten a lot of buzz in the last years. And frankly, I believe we haven't even seen the starting point of it. I think we are just in the mode of preparing for it. What we are looking for is somebody like an Apple releasing a proper set of glasses that just look like your Ray-Ban glasses, but they superimpose, computer screens and then also the reality aspect of it onto your lens. You could do that as a replacement for your regular glasses. If we can technically make it happen, that we're adjusting on the fly, sort of, and correcting for your vision impairments. Those are the opportunities. Now, in my industry, how that looks like. We envision that a technician that goes into the field tomorrow and looks at a power pole does not have to open up his iPad anymore, but the glasses themselves recognize that is a power pole for my company. Up there is a transformer. The camera automatically reads sort of the imprint on the transformer, validates that with a backend system. So I'm not just providing safety information, but I'm also providing efficiencies, because when you're talking to our customers, one of the major problems is master data management. They don't even know what's out there. So by people literally just looking at stuff, we can take that, process it, and compare it with the internal system landscape. That's huge opportunities for improvement and huge benefits. So we're talking millions of dollars. The other scenario that we have around augmented reality that we run by utilities, for example, is they sending out a technician, every so often, to inspect your gas riser. That's the pipe that comes out of the ground and runs to the gas meter. We need to inspect that for safety purposes. What if we could just give an application to every customer and say, listen, you just take a proper picture of it and you get $20 of a discount on your annual bill. In contrast, an inspection where a technician comes out probably costs the company about $100. So the company saves 80, the customer saves 20, everybody wins. And all of that is because we have used technologies that's readily available today to sort of improve that process. So all of those scenarios are things where you see that, we can do way more today than what we're already doing. And that's exciting for us, because we're talking about changes that are not just the 5 to 10% business cases, but we're talking about things that sort of are in the SpaceX form of, you're talking multiples in benefits and not just sort of little tiny business case. And that's really why, my job as CTO, I always describe it as I have the best job in the company, because I can push the limits on these technologies, but in the context of, making everybody, more efficient, more compliant, and more safe in the industry.
Well, I think there's one really interesting area that was always part of the CTO role, but I feel like it's moved more front and center. And it really relates to the pandemic. And in fact, this moment that we've been moving through, which is, every conversation I've ever had with a CTO, they're worried about security, they're worried about all those types of issues. But man, in a hybrid world, how complex. Tell me more about what the last couple of years have been like for you.
Yeah, on a personal note, it's actually great. I had the challenge that I didn't want to travel as much anyway. So what COVID did for me personally is it's made me stuck at my house and didn't have me to travel a lot. So that was great. And I appreciate that. On a company note, the first thing I said to my colleagues is I don't think we will ever buy desktop computers anymore and more in a CIO role, because we have to be prepared today as organizations, as companies, to have our workforce be able to work from anywhere, any place, and by the way, anytime. So I'm not forcing you to come into the office. So that's one side of the coin. And we are doing this. We're a web session. We're not meeting in New York or San Francisco or in Seattle. So I think the good news is that we've seen efficiencies that there were all along, but COVID has forced us to acknowledge that it's possible. So we can work as shared teams. Having said that, though, and to be realistic, I am also a proponent to once in a while get together in person. I think there's nothing better than having a team meeting, having the coffee corner chat that you should have in order to form those social bonds that I just even though I'm a technologist and I love technology, I don't think we have the same experience through a Zoom meeting. So those are the two sides. And when you talk security, there's obviously a lot to unpack on that side, especially with all the challenges what we have seen in security. I think the good news is the security threats we're facing are predominantly fixable by just training your people. If people know not to click on links, if people know what fake requests look like, if people don't sort of respond to every text message they get, even though it looks very interesting, I think that's sort of the first barrier. There's obviously something with technology we can do, and I think we have done that for years with virus scanners, firewalls, you name it. But I still believe that the person that sits in front of the machine is your obviously from a hacker perspective, the angle that is targeted, and that's really where we have to do more in order to make sure that our organizations are trained up. We're at Rizing, I think, are doing a really good job. So we have programs in place that on a monthly basis, you sort of get refresher trainings in order to make sure that we don't fall victim to that. But we've seen certainly coinciding with acquisition announcements, additional threats being put on our doorstep. And we have a correlation between sort of public announcements and even you and me talking. I will probably get a whole lot of fake requests again over the next month, just because I show up on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Right. So I love what you're saying. It's such a great point, and certainly something that gets lost when we think of technology, because the advancements in tech are incredible. They are transformational. However, if we don't train properly, if we don't kind of give the teams the skills to embrace that stuff, then you're left with that kind of disconnection that occurs, right? Where you as Martin are super excited about the technology, but then, there's this lag of nobody using it. And so I love the focus that you guys have in bringing the two together.
And really, Ben, that's sort of I think one of the biggest challenges I personally face. It's that continual education of senior executives. I always describe it as, sometimes the challenge of, having business cases put in front of you that we could have delivered in 1990. But we are in 2022. So there's a lot more that technology can do today. So we have to continuously reset the aim. And the challenge, I think, is to continuously educate senior executives as to what is possible. And I'm not talking about sort of the fictitious things that still have sort of gestation periods of 5 to 10 years, but stuff that is doable right now without super complex technology matters or horsepower, but it can drive real improvements in their business. So don't just aim for, as I said, what we could do in the 1980s and 1990s when you went to business school, but aim for what's possible today. And as I mentioned before, sort of the percentages we're seeing in your business cases are real. And that's sort of where the risk for kind of established companies comes in. If they lose track of what's really possible, then you might have Uber situations where sort of another company doesn't have the legacy of an existing business process. They're starting with just applying the new technologies to the same business problems, but have an efficiency advantage of 2 to 3 times more efficient. And that's sort of where the risk for established companies comes in. So how do you find the balance? So that's one aspect. The other aspect that I think I've seen as a business leader is the ever increasing pace of change, primarily driven through new and improved technologies. And people just simply cannot keep up.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago, technology was usually the limiting factor in the change of adoption, and you've touched on it. Today, what we're seeing is that the human being is the predominant factor to adapt and consume that change. And no, I'm not advocating giving controls to the machines, but there seems to be an invisible line that we're touching on, and we might even be crossed, of how much technical change we can actually absorb as a society. And those are the interesting factors to say, okay, can we really push a release each year, or is it just way too much for people and businesses to absorb? So release cycles of 3 months sounded like a great idea. And yes, for a little iPhone app, that really works if you sort of continuously push change. But for bigger things, it might be just way too much to sort of absorb on a continuous basis.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I did a little bit of research for a PhD I did in 2019 and 2020 on the movement towards upskilling related to machine learning. And I think that discussion is really at the center of what you're referring to, Martin. I mean, here we have this movement towards utilizing data more effectively, utilizing it to essentially automate certain functions and roles. And yet we need to make sure that we're training people to, one, be able to use that technology efficiently, but two, to perhaps focus their energies on higher order tasks, right? And that's the whole set of challenges. Interestingly enough, it's been hard to see many companies invest properly to do that. You know, I mean, there's some in your area. I know Amazon has done quite a good job in that area. But when I asked many companies, it was a real challenge because I think they were struggling with exactly what you referred to, which is so much technology, so many things to think about. How do we get ahead of this, right?
Yeah, and on the machine learning front, I always start with the ABCs, and I think what with all that hype around artificial intelligence and machines taking over and everything is going to get automated, I think go back to the basics. The one basic that I always tell my customer that has seemingly gone lost in the shuffle is especially predictive algorithms usually give you a percentage. This is my recommendation based on a certain percentage. So it's not the 1 or 0, the black or white that we have seen in IT for years, and it's a completely new mindset. So there are some threads out there around explainable AI. So provide a recommendation to the end user for what to enter here, or give them a suggestion, but at the same time also let them know that no, it's not a 1 or 0, it's not 100%. This is your answer. This is based on a machine learning algorithm that got trained, but it does not mean that it has the 100% answer. It means that you cross the threshold from 80 to whatever 90%, and that's why we're giving you that recommendation. But that's sort of what we need to. I think that's where we need to start to make sure is that people appreciate what it brings to the table. Is it an improvement over what I have right now, which is I have an empty field? Absolutely. Does that mean that it's better than me and has always the right answer? Absolutely not. And if you have a necessity to be always at 100%, then this approach might not be the right one. But again, on the flip side of that, when we're talking about recognition of objects, when we're talking about the things that I mentioned before, I mean, compared to what we're doing right now, we actually catapulting ourselves from the Stone Age into the Jetsons age. And that is the big differentiator.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, listen, I mean, Martin, as you look forward now, here we are in an interesting, I'd say, time period again. We're seeing kind of one economic cycle come to an end, a new economic cycle perhaps opening up next year. How does that affect your planning on technology and what's really on the horizon?
So what we're doing, and that's sort of where my team comes in, we're taking the technology ideas that we're having and that we're moving them beyond what I call the PowerPoint presentation. Everybody can make a business case on a PowerPoint slide, but what we're doing is we're taking them for a spin and implementing them all the way through. That doesn't mean that we're training the machine learning model to 90.9%. It means that the 80% approach is good enough for us to make sure is that the business case is solid and we feel comfortable to take that to our customers and standing tall in front of them and say, this makes sense, and we can prove you that we can execute against this, because that's kind of what it comes down to. We grew up and we got this big, not by sort of having the best presentations, but by proving our customers that we can actually deliver. And I always ask my customers, like, let's have a challenge, because I know that my team will be able to deliver, and that's kind of why I'm better than the competition. So that's sort of the interesting thing for us.
I love it.
So, but technologies in itself, there are technologies out there that we feel are sort of, coming up in the next couple of years. There are some technologies and some offerings from SAP that we believe in the next 5 years are going to explode just simply because SAP has an end of maintenance date in 2027. So we're looking forward to that, which will drive our customer base to the cloud and into these future technologies, and just, reevaluating some of the processes that we've talked about for a while. So a lot of opportunities in the next few years, and a lot of planning going on is in how do we prepare for that? How do we prepare for what we believe will be an increase in demand in our market, the SAP system integrator space? And it's going to be an exciting 5 years for us.
Martin, we've been covering off a lot of big topics today in the tech space. If someone wanted to learn more about what you and the Rizing team are working on, where's the best place to reach you?
martin.stenzig@rizing.com. Send me an email. I'm always open for these discussions. Always happy to have these kinds of chats, Ben. So really appreciate you inviting me to your show. And at rizing.com, you'll find all the information about the company. But yeah, I'm always open for these kinds of exchanges with peers, with industry groups, with audiences in general. Invite me and let's have a chat.
Well, it's been amazing talking to you, Martin. We've been speaking with Martin Stenzig. Martin Stenzig is the CTO of Rizing. Rizing is a fast-growing company. It actually enables businesses to use SAP solutions to achieve intelligent enterprises. And they have been scaling for many, many years. And we've been talking to Martin Stenzig, who's their CTO, about what technology can be doing, how the areas that are exciting, like augmented reality, machine learning, but also, interestingly enough, the human element here, which is how do we get teams to embrace the accelerated pace of technology in an effective way for an organization. Martin, thank you so much for being on the show today, and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Ben.
Cheers.